Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage CEO of Calamos Investments and member of the Concordia Leadership Council member, John Koudounis.
Thank you. A few months ago, I introduced Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras at the Concordia Europe Summit in New York. And it's with great pleasure to once again welcome him to the stage in Concordia to provide closing remarks of yet another impressive and extremely constructive summit. It is with greater pleasure this time I'm welcoming him in our home country, Greece, Ελλάδα. His last address at the Concordia Summit in New York in September was not very long ago. Yet in this short period, a lot of steps forward have been made. The first sign of growth have been reported at the closing of the first quarter of 2017, which provided the Greek people with a spark of optimism of a 7-year-long recession. He recently characterized the exit from the economic crisis as a national and not a political goal, demonstrating that the issues tormenting the country transcend the planes of party politics and enter into a broader sphere of overlapping national and transnational matters. Indeed, in an ever-global stage, having a broader outlook is the key to addressing entangled global challenges, like the refugee crisis and the recent shifts in regional leadership that have been addressed throughout the summit. The Concordia European Summit is concluding today at a critical time in Greece's history, with the country being right at the point between austerity and growth. Public-private partnerships had the power to elevate the country over the point and bring many of the EU and the global issues on the same path. Prime Minister Tsipras' administration recently stated that they are determined to offer solutions to the Greek people, and through his presence here today, he is boosting even further the recently gained momentum of this Greek economy. As a member of the EU and a player in the global stage, Greece and Prime Minister are faced with a greater challenge: the preservation of the momentum, which at the same time is aligned with the path to achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Prime Minister Tsipras' continuous and devoted engagement with Concordia Summit indicate his long-standing commitment to all political and social issues surrounding Greece, the EU, and the globe. His determination proved that Greece will always be defying the odds and pushing ahead. Zito Elas. Please join me in welcoming on stage Prime Minister Tsipras.
John, you forget your notices. John, this is yours. Φίλες και φίλοι,
Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you so much, and I'd like to thank you for the introductory note, John. and your kind words. I'd like to extend my warm thanks to the Board of Directors of Concordia. Let me thank you for inviting me, and it's an honor to be addressing you at this very important summit. You see, I believe that this is the kind of initiatives that are required today as we speak. We need such initiatives in order for us to embark on a big conversation and also lay the foundation for a transition into an era of dynamic and sustainable growth for Greece. For Greece, which for 7 years now has been experiencing the dire impact of wrong choices. Choices that were made by previous governments that led this country to the verge of bankruptcy, but also choices made by our partners in Europe, who, since the start of the crisis, actually pointed to the wrong recipe. They gave us the wrong recipe to overcome this crisis. But I think that now, today, it is imperative that we stop talking about the past. It is preferable now to look into the future. And it's preferable to make the decisions that are called for in order for this future to be a future of growth, a future of prosperity and opportunities, and also a future mostly of social equity and justice. And this is a huge effort that's worth exerting all of us together. Let's pitch in to do so much, the government, our partners, but mostly the Greek citizens, the working people, and the healthy and robust enterprises, the healthy and robust entrepreneurial bases, because they will be investing in a country that is full of opportunities, and thus investment projects can create new jobs, and they can thus generate wealth. Today, I believe Greece has great scope, and it can indeed look into the future and look ahead while being optimistic. And this is not just a simple wish. I have data in my hands, and everything points to a positive path. During the first quarter of 2017, we had growth. After many years in a row, we had growth for the first time, despite this sense of uncertainty that was created by a prolonged negotiation with institutions in view of the conclusion to the second review. Most of the indicators and indexes, such as private consumption, for instance, the trade indicators, exports, investments, but mostly employment, the employment rate, which is of great interest to us because we are faced with huge unemployment and have been faced with huge unemployment rates since 2010. So most those indicators, and especially the employment rate, have recovered or are recovering as we speak. Today, we had the official announcement made of the official statistics of Ergani, an institution under the auspices of the Ministry of Labour. According to these recent statistics, during May 2017, we broke a record. In the past 6 years, we had unprecedented figures now. You see, in May 2017, we had 89,500 new jobs created in Greece, and these will be added to approximately 92,000 new jobs that were created in the month of April, that is, prior to May. And this still was record-breaking if we compare statistics between now and the distant 2001, for that matter, long before we were faced with this huge adventure and the dire circumstances of this crisis, which goes to show that there is huge scope ahead of us. And these figures go to show, indeed indicate that Greece can make it. All of the aforementioned indeed provides us with able proof of the fact that there is momentum for recovery as we speak, and this is sustainable just as long as we capitalize on this huge opportunity that we have in our hands. Let's make sure we do not let it go to waste. Greece is ready. The investors are ready as well. The markets are also ready. And so the only thing that all of us, all of you are waiting for is just one single signal, a signal from the political leadership of Europe and the institutions as well. A signal that will indicate that indeed it's high time that investors trust in Greece again. Let's have one such signal and have white smoke go up in order for everyone to see that indeed our partners will do their part and do everything that is necessary in order for growth to be on top of the agenda of priorities we should have and implement in view of the next programming periods. And I believe that in the next days to come, we will have the opportunity to make the right decisions. You are very, very well aware of the fact that as we speak, this critical debate is in progress in Europe. This is a critical discussion that can shape the future of this country. And this is not about the short term, but this is a debate that will define our future for decades to come. And then there is a decision that can be made on the 15th of June, a decision that will settle forever, once and forever, the Greek issue. And such a decision today is needed more than ever before, and we have to make sure it's there. It's needed because we shouldn't lose and waste any more political time, because we're at an exceptional point in terms of recovery, and we should take advantage of that. And it's feasible to have such a decision made in the midst of June, because Greece has done everything that it ought to do. It kept its end of the deal. It actually made good on all of its commitments. In reality, I would say that Greece has done more than it ought to in order to make sure that the program will be brought to a smooth conclusion. But above and beyond anything, the Greek people has done more than it ought to have or should have done. The Greek people has made great sacrifices to make sure that Greece will stick on its European path and make sure that there is unity in Europe. So now it's up to, and it's the turn of our creditors and our partners to do what they ought to do and what we have a right to on the basis of what we have agreed on. For you see, nobody in Greece can refute or say no to the fact that we here in Greece have a right to sustainable growth. And we shouldn't allow for anything to jeopardize our path towards achieving growth, which after all will not just be to the interests of Greece alone, but it will also be beneficial for our creditors in Europe. This is to the interest of our creditors in Europe. Europe is a political and economic, but also social edifice, a social venture. After all the sacrifices that the Greek people had to go through in the name of Europe, I believe that what we are claiming is actually what's self-evident and nothing more than that. We are working towards a deal that will solve once and for all the issue of the Greek debt. We are looking forward to having such a deal that will be succinct and specific as concerns the measures that will be implemented after the end of this program in the summer of 2018. And we're working towards striking a deal that will allow all the institutions, including the ECB, to proceed with positive surveys and studies with regard to the sustainability of the Greek debt. And then a question begs itself. What is the key to achieving this much coveted convergence and bridging the differences and divergences? You know very well that in the previous Eurogroup several proposals were made. They were not sufficient, nor were they enough. And the main issue that actually stood in the way of bridging those differences or discrepancies lied in the fact that there were different estimates made by the IMF and Europe as concerns the growth rate of the Greek economy in the midterm and the long run. And thus, it turns out that it's possible to bridge these gaps and have some sort of convergence between the two diverging estimates, just as long as there's a will. And I'm not suggesting that we make those two estimates converge by asking someone to give way or maybe turn a blind eye to their own estimates or the reality, but we have to make sure that we bridge those differences, really do, essentially do, just as long as Europe agrees to undertaking specific commitments and initiatives that are needed next to the necessary prolongation of the or extension of the maturity of our repayments. So we would expect Europe to also commit itself to investment projects that will come, profit-making programs and projects that will invigorate growth, that will create new jobs, and that will eventually bridge those two different estimates and make them come closer together in reality. And I'm referring to the divergent estimates of the European institutions on the one hand and the IMF on the other. So this is actually at the very heart of the conversation, the whole debate which is in progress, which is underway. And this is the main issue that we have not agreed on as far as we're concerned when it comes to the negotiation table, because we are not coming to the negotiation as beggars, and we are not grudging, nor are we complaining. We are coming to the negotiation table suggesting specific things, tangible things that can help us bring or rather achieve convergence between the ideas and the estimates of our partners. And we're offering a way out because we believe we can find a way out of the situation, just as long as everyone wishes for a way out to be found, just as long as we don't allow the political expediencies to stand in our way. Because both Europe and Greece do need today to transition over a growth agenda. We, for our part, have set forth the criteria on the basis of which we can find a sustainable and just solution. And let me also, at this point, make reference to the fact that both the German Chancellor and the new French President that I'm conversing with are well aware of the fact, and I'm well aware of the fact, that they are in favor of and defending a Europe of growth. They are defending a Europe that will not just insist single-handedly on fiscal discipline and monetary policies alone. It's high time we prove that such declarations can be put in practice. It's high time we do that now that there is the political and economic momentum there. This is the time for big political decisions to be made in order for Greece to be back in the path of European normalcy and for Europe to, at long last, write a story of successes after so many crises and so many problems that it's been faced with over the past few years. And of course, this will be sealed and branded, or rather, this will seal and brand success. For you see, success will become apparent just as long as we are given scope to again go to the money markets. That would be important for Greece, just as long as this is made possible through viable terms, and as long as there is a sense of trust restored as concerns investors, and just as long as those aforementioned criteria materialize, then believe you me, then Greece will be able to transform itself very fast, and it can thus promptly and fastly put the 7 years of this crisis and this whole nightmare behind it, and it can thus take advantage of its huge scope and its competitive advantages, which are huge as well. First of all, there is a high-quality human resources here, and there's also a geographical location that can be taken advantage of. It's a great edge. We can be a pole or a hub of stability and growth. This is exactly what's at stake today, and we shouldn't let this opportunity go to waste. We are preparing for the Greek economy in order for it to eventually be able to cope with the challenges of an ever-changing economic environment that is really and highly competitive. And it is to that end that we have been working very hard over the past 2 years. We have introduced up-to-date financial and monetary tools. We have adopted a flexible and resilient growth law. We have proceeded with relevant reforms that are entrepreneurship friendly, and we adjusted to the extent that we could the public investment program of ours. The current accounts balance shows that we are gradually transitioning over from an old model that heavily counted on consumption and loans. Now we are moving towards a more extroverted and more dynamic model that heavily counts on the edges that this country has, the competitive advantages, especially the human resources, the exceptional human resources that I mentioned before as well. Our direct priority, our immediate priority, is to make sure that we bring unemployment down as fast as possible, and we want to make sure that we put an end to the brain drain. So we have to have viable growth in order for these people to stay here instead of having the internal devaluation of pensions and wages happen. We want to have an equitable growth that will be just and viable. As far as we're concerned, important steps were made. After all, this is made apparent through the various estimates that have been made by internationally acclaimed organizations and institutions with regard to the future of the Greek economy. There's also proof of this matter in the fact that there is interest on the part of the global investment community. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, Greece has a lot to offer, huge scope, just as long as you trust in it. We have an advantageous geographical location. This is where 3 continents meet. There's also stability and security in Greece. It's unique in the wider region of the Eastern Mediterranean that has been through trials and tribulations. This all makes Greece a unique point of reference, and this makes us ideal in terms of, in particular, investment projects in the field of energy, for instance. We are champions in terms of the tourist industry and shipping. We expect this year to have more than 30 million tourists visit Greece. We have exceptional agro-food quality. Our food is sought after the world over. We have exceptionally great research centers. We have highly skilled and specialized human resources. Our human capital can be instrumental in growth. It can help primary research as well as new innovative ideas, products and services. Allow me, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, at this point to refer to the wider challenges that our region is faced with, especially Europe, since Europe, or rather our homeland, Greece, is an integral part of Europe. Europe, as we speak, is faced with global challenges that are too big for it, and it's also faced with various contradictions. When it comes to managing the refugee and the migrant crisis, the management thereof was the fastest way for deconstructing ourselves in Europe and letting it dissolve. The Brexit is the most visible side effect of this choice that Europe made. Europe opted for an impasse in terms of managing the refugee-migrant crisis, and we have to put an end to that. Let's make sure, or rather let's remember that indeed Europe cannot go on depending heavily on defense and security offered by others. And Europe cannot go on being divided within itself, divided by a wall of money that separates the north from the south. And actually, there are multiple strategies and multiple speeds within Europe. As long as Europe is divergent within itself, as long as the socio-economic divide between the partners of Europe is growing the more inequalities we have within Europe and its member states, the tougher it will be for Europe to eventually determine its fate. And let me remind you what the G7 summit suggested, especially what the German Chancellor, Ms. Merkel, said in Bari, because in order for Europe to be in charge of its fate, this fate has to first and foremost be a shared fate, a common fate. And we can't have a common fate or a destiny shaped for all the peoples of Europe when the fate of some is determined by a policy that suggests we opt for unilateral austerity, and when such decisions are made within the contexts of certain directories without any legitimacy whatsoever, and when there are exceptions made to the European acquis, when it comes to labor issues or social security and social protection. And there's also the geographical parameter when it comes to managing the migratory crisis. You see, Europe will be in charge of its destiny when the peoples of Europe, all of us together, are in charge, and in order for us to make sure that we restore those founding principles and values that, after all, inspired the founding fathers of Europe with a view to having this single cause. So we have to make Europe a cause for not just a handful of technocrats, but all of its citizens. Europe must be a cause for democracy for its people. And in order for this to happen, we have to make sure that we exclude and do away with the various scenarios that have nothing to do with the treaties of Europe, when there is mention of multiple speeds or the so-called hardcore of Europe, because you see a small Europe will be a weak Europe, an irrelevant Europe for global development and evolution. So on the basis of equity, all the member states of the EU must pick up speed in order for socio-economic deepening to materialize. The democratization process of Europe must materialize fast, thanks to the people of Europe, because as far as this is concerned, Europe retrograded, especially when the infamous Eurogroup happened. This has nothing to do with accountability within the European Parliament or the national parliaments, but still we had the Eurogroup become the main directory that is exercising huge power in terms of European policies and politics. And so the Eurozone's democratization does not signify an institutionalization of the status quo by vesting it in some sort of democratic legalization mandate. We have to have a government that will always be accountable to the people. We have to have concerted actions and policies in terms of fiscal affairs and our economies. We have to have a clear orientation. We also have to make sure we have mutualization of risks. We need to have a social convergence and a socially binding European pillar for social rights, for that matter. In the final analysis, the democratization of the Eurozone would signify a new organic chapter for a new organic unity, if you will, a new start for Europe, a new start that we all need, a new beginning. Dear friends, Greece has proven, I think, today, after 7 years in a crisis, and following the fact that it showed time and again that it's able to overcome the crisis, especially after the refugee crisis that it managed to tackle in a successful manner. Now Greece has proven that it's not part of the problem, but it's rather part of the solution as far as European and global challenges in our days are concerned. So in the field of the economy, in the field of managing flows, refugee and migrant flows, and also regional security, it has proven it can cope. And allow me, in the last part of my speech today, to make reference to our strategic vision as well. Our new strategic vision with regards to the international, the European, and the regional position of Greece in the 21st century. Just like I said before, as far as the economy is concerned, our new vision has everything to do with growth. And of course, an equitable adjustment to or management of the public debt. But when it comes to external affairs, foreign policies, we have a new vision that's in favor of a multifaceted and active foreign policy making that takes into account rapid international developments within the context of a globalized economy and a multipolar world. This is a contemporary foreign policy that will not be trapped in dilemmas that date back in the Cold War era or even the post-Cold War era. This is a foreign policy that will reject the reasoning that suggested that when it comes to international affairs, you can have pupils, countries that are masters and others that are students thereof. But at the same point in time, this is a foreign policy that will count on protecting the international and European legislation, no matter how hard this might be in our neighborhood, be it pertinent to the Treaty of Lisbon, the Acquis, the Geneva Treaty, the Schengen Treaty, or decisions and resolutions by the UN Security Council or the International Maritime Law and the Treaty of Lausanne. This contemporary, allow me to describe it as such, this modern, patriotic foreign policy capitalizes on the geopolitical location of Greece as well as its historical, cultural, economic, and diplomatic buttresses and foundations. This is a strategic plan that envisages Greece, just try to picture this now, as a big tree that is rooted in the West. Its roots are in a united Europe, but still its branches can reach out everywhere. So the branches go out to the east and the west and the south and the north. So Greece can capitalize on scope there is, since it's in the Mediterranean, in the Balkans, close to the Middle East and the Black Sea. But Greece is also a country that has a very long tradition of ties and friendship with the Arab world. Moreover, Greece is a global tourist cultural power. And let me not forget about this too, for you see, Greece is quite strong in terms of the shipping industry, but also there's the Greek diaspora, which is really active. So in a new and very complicated international context, Greece is trying to become a global hub, a hub in terms of trade, transport, energy, tourism, culture, for the wider region we're in. And at the same point in time, Greece is consolidating itself as a pillar for peace, for stability and security in an environment that I described before, an ever-destabilizing environment for that matter. And against this backdrop, we've always been supportive of, and we will be supportive of, and actively so, of discussions to achieve a viable position, a viable solution to the Cypriot issue on the basis of international legislation by doing away with the anachronistic system of guarantees and upon condition that the troops leave the island. We are steadily and steadfastly protective of our sovereign rights on the basis of international law. Whenever we are faced with illegitimate claims and disputes on the part of our neighboring Turkey. And at the same point in time, we are working towards enhancing bilateral dialogue. We are supportive of the accession talks of our neighbor despite the difficulties, and we work more than many European partners of ours with a view to making European-Turkish cooperation happen. And the outcomes are important, and that's how we got to the tough but necessary statement that was made, a deal between Turkey and the EU, which led to the containment of the refugee flows in the Aegean. But most importantly, this led to a diminishing death toll in the Aegean. We strove and we are still striving hard with a view to assuming the burden for all of Europe in terms of managing the refugee crisis, and we did that always supporting and defending the European principles and values. And we also put in place a mechanism that was not even there a few years ago. And then we also took a number of important initiatives, European initiatives, such as, for example, the Southern European Member States Summit. This is very important with regard to the future of the EU and the Mediterranean. And this came at a point in time when this is really necessary for the European Union. We're also enhancing and improving our diplomatic ties and relations with the Balkan countries. We have established, for instance, cooperation councils with Serbia and Bulgaria. We're also proceeding with confidence-building measures and measures to promote dialogue. This is the case between us and FYROM. When it comes to the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, we're looking forward to having stability restored there. We are also proceeding with negotiations with a view to settling differences. This is the case with Albania, and we've also established quadrilateral and trilateral cooperation schemes with Romania, Croatia, Bulgaria. And we are clear in the message we're communicating. We are thus stating that only by containing and harnessing nationalism and only through fostering and encouraging dialogue is it possible to make progress. And at the same point in time, in close conjunction with the Cypriot Republic, we are working on a bilateral and trilateral basis with the Middle East, Israel, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, Jordan, Palestine, and Lebanon. At the same point in time, we are also improving and enhancing our relations with our partners in the Black Sea. We are heavily emphasizing on the cultural and energy sector as well as political cooperation, and we are also upgrading in many fields our long-term relations and bonds with China. And most certainly, we are further improving and enhancing our strategic connection with the United States of America. This is a relationship that is being buttressed in order to deal with the security challenges that we're faced with in this area, but we're also doing that with a view to helping the recovery and restructuring of the Greek economy. This is a critical relationship. More than ever before, it's critical today, and it counts. Also, it's based on the precious and timeless efforts that the Greek diaspora has been exerted. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, with these thoughts in mind, I tried to paint the broad picture for you. And I thus tried to communicate to you both our plan and our vision as concerns the new era of Greece. Greece that has already turned over a page. It's turned over a new leaf, and it needs a new boost in order for it to proceed and advance, and fastly so, in order for it to leave behind it a very tough 7-year-long period. 7 years of uncertainty. Let's leave it behind and make sure that we conquer a better future for the sake of men and women, the people of Greece, and most importantly, the youth. And with these thoughts in mind, let me also extend my warm thanks to you. Yet again, thank you for inviting me. And let me also commend you for the success of your two-day summit. It is an honor for us to have your summit held in Athens and not just in New York City. And let me also wish all the best, and hopefully your next summit will be an occasion for us to proceed with stock-taking in terms of the new steps that Greece will be making into the era of growth, stability, and progress, the new era for the Greek economy, a new era mostly for the Greek people that have sacrificed so much, and they have every right to embark on such a journey. Thank you.